Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome in everybody to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Emmet Wyman, and we are back for a Week 4 recap. Season's flying along, like I said, guys. I mean, Week 1, Week 2, we're already at the quarter marking period, right? Here come report cards. That would be a good segment. We should do some report cards. Not today, though. We have a show planned out for you that is really good, real juicy. The normal Tuesday, Wednesday show. Basically going to go over some power ratings in the next segment. We got some recaps of the DFS selections this week. Guys, we would have had the perfect lineup. But the thing is, Nick Chubb absolutely cost us in the DFS. We had, just to recap if you guys didn't listen to the show, on Saturday, our lineup was Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, who, literally, the dude he could have had 7 touchdowns versus the Falcons. It was ridiculous. Dan Quinn, come on, dude. We won't. We'll leave, Kayvon, we'll leave your Falcons alone today, okay? We'll move on. We'll leave your Falcons alone. I'll try not to that was pretty embarrassing. That was pretty embarrassing. Now the offense isn't even going for the Falcons, so I don't know what to say. So Rodgers was excellent. Singletary was solid. Nick Chubb, if Nick Chubb didn't get hurt, guys, considering what happened in that Cowboys game, he would have had over 200 rushing yards. Not even a chance that he didn't. He would have definitely had over 200 rushing yards if he was healthy throughout that entire Cowboy game. So it's a shame, but it is what it is. We had Will Fuller, receiver. He was excellent. Didn't get in the end zone, he did get in the end zone, 100 yards for a touchdown. Parker didn't get in the end zone, but he had over 100 yards, so he was still solid, 11 receptions. TJ Hawkinson was decent at tight end. I gave him out. I liked him. Mike Davis in the flex. Mike Davis, this kid out of nowhere, man. I think he was I think he was on the Bears. The Bears brought him in. And the Bears thought they liked Montgomery more than him, so they just cut Davis. And, Panthers picked him up, and they're looking back going, man, McCaffrey, what the heck is, what's his worth? We're winning games with Mike Davis. Look, I know a lot of people, that's not going to make a lot of people happy just due to the fact that, we're not trying to, demote the value of running backs. But look, there's some systems where you could just plug in a new running back and it's off to the races. There's no looking back. So it's just the fact that, I don't know, in terms of fantasy, I think that's really good because that means for teams like that are doing bad because I had Saquon Barkley and Le'Veon Bell and all these injured bust players. I shouldn't have picked Le'Veon Bell. What a stupid pick. But, you have Barkley hurt. There's a lot of players. Mike Thomas is hurt. Ekeler just got hurt this weekend. Chubb got hurt. Give me the name. I can't even think of some names, but there's so many guys hurt. It's stacking. The injuries are ridiculous. So there's opportunities to improve your team. I think there's opportunities in even trades. You could trade for some lower profile guys and maybe cross your fingers, hope some of these guys get hurt. That's what I have to look at. That's why I like guys in the offseason like J.K. Dobbins and Mecole Hardman, because I had a feeling. It's like, look, if J.K. Dobbins is the number one running back in the Ravens, he's going to be the best fantasy player. He's going to be the best fantasy player, period. You're the number one running back for the Ravens with nobody else on that team. You're gonna just have every single. That's one of the best rushing offenses in the league. You're gonna have a great rushing production, and then you're gonna get a lot of touches in the receiving game. Same Mecole Hardman, if he's ever the Tyreek Hill were to go down, he's the number one receiver. I mean, to have Pat Mahomes, you're going to have a ton of yards. You're going to have one touchdown, which he had last. You did have a touchdown, I believe. It was on one of the final plays of the game. I think that's back-to-back touchdowns for Hardman now. Interesting. Still not a starter yet, but he might one day. But still, it just shows that there's depth in a lot of these teams. They're going to have multiple skill position players. So if one guy goes down, if you're on that same team. So if you have an Amari Cooper, let's say, maybe I'm rambling, but guys, I want you to get the point. If Amari Cooper goes down, it can't hurt to have Mike Gallup on your team. If you can't get him off waivers, it can't hurt to. Let's see. I mean, this is in deeper leagues, guys. This isn't. If you're in a 10-man, even a 12-man, this probably can't apply to you just due to the fact that your bench is probably filled with better players. But if you're in the 14 and up deep leagues, pick up some guys in these high octane offenses that had some big games, just in case the guy above him goes down. You could just keep the train moving, just like these teams. Okay. Similar example I gave out in the offseason. I talked about how Alexander Madison you might want to pick him because if Dalvin Cook ever goes down, he's going to have a monster year because of that offense. So you never really know with some of these guys, but hang on to them. But I feel like if going back to DFS, I feel like we did really well this week. If Chubb didn't get hurt, this lineup would have won you $1 million. But Chubb getting hurt really just canceled everything out. How about I can't duck the elephant in the room. Why don't we talk about that Cowboys game? What a disgrace. What a disgrace. I mean, Mike Nolan, you should just hang your head down and stick your head in the dirt, dude. I mean, that was despicable. 300 rushing yards. 300. Baker Mayfield didn't do crap. He was horrible. The one throw he had to make late in the game down the sideline to Odell, he threw it out of bounds. That throw was pathetic. Baker Mayfield, you are horrible, dude. You're horrible. Jarvis Landry throws the football better than you. I should have tweeted this out. I texted one of my buddies. After that first play, when obviously you guys were talking about the double reverse. I mean, great play call by Kevin Stefanski and great play design. Totally had the Cowboys fooled. Nobody defended Landry's arm because he was left-handed. So when these receivers are doing the double reverse or end around, whatever you want to call it, and Landry's rolling out on the left side, nobody in the world's thinking he's going to throw the ball. It's already I don't know if an anomaly would really fit into this, but the fact that he's going to throw the ball downfield is it's not even entering the player's mind, especially when he's running left-handed. Yeah, he's going to throw a 45-yard bomb with his left hand. I don't think so, but he did. And it looked better than any of Baker Mayfield's passes I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding you guys. They ought to really consider putting him at Wildcat a lot because it would bring a new dynamic to offenses. And really, I think there's going to be a time soon. I mean, this not a good time to say this, but I think there's going to be maybe I'll write an article about this in the future where I think the game is going to evolve to where two quarterbacks are going to be on the field because that would just the way defenses are playing. I mean, maybe I'm watching the Cowboys too much, but it doesn't seem like every defense in the league sucks. Am I crazy? I mean, Patriots' defense is getting scored on. Freaking the only defense that's been doing well is the Colts. The Colts have been doing really well, and Steelers. But Steelers, they have so many first and second round picks. I mean, come on, they have to do well. Colts, same thing. I mean, they traded for DeForest Buckner. They invested a lot. They're doing well. But the Colts really haven't played any high-octane offenses. I mean, they held Nick Foles to 11 points. Congratulations. But, I mean, I just think there's going to be a time in the game where there's going to be two quarterbacks, and it's going to really – the play design is going to be really interesting. I don't know how do you draw it up. I mean, if I did, then I think Kyle Shanahan would do it. But I don't know how you're going to draw it up, but I think that's going to be a future because after watching that one play, okay, that was essentially a two-quarterback play. All right, maybe I'm harping on this too much, but it just totally fooled the entire – it fooled everybody. it fooled the cameraman. For crying out loud. I guarantee you it fooled Mike McCarthy. But, I mean, that was just a pretty play. And then moving on, I mean, Dak and, they had that play action and CD. That was a great play. 7-7 tied it up. He threw that dot to Amari, got up by 1. And ever since then, the hellgates broke loose. I mean, Zeke Elliott, we'll talk about studs and duds. He's on the duds list. I mean, that was a horrible game by him. Granted, they only gave him 12 carries, but he fumbled the football. You can't fumble the football, Zeke. I love you, dude, but you can't fumble the ball. All right, then you're just becoming useless. You can't do that. That's why, I mean, if you fumble the ball again, they might have to consider Tony Pollard. I'm not even kidding. Even though you make $15 million a year, you can't do that. And then what was even dumber was how about the coaching staff for putting that Terrence Steele, that right tackle. I mean, you're putting him against Myles Garrett one-on-one. What do you think's going to happen? Not even tight end, not even having Zeke over there to chip him? That's like practicing against a dummy. It's Myles Garrett, guys. It's Myles freaking Garrett. Guy was a number 1 pick in the draft. He was one of those players where he was the number 1 pick 2 years before he came out. He was that good of a player. Okay, and he's from Texas, went to Texas A&M. All right, at Jerry, you don't think he's trying to get a sack at Jerry World? All those guys were trying to get game. And that's why I think the Browns. That's why I like the Browns. I mean, I'm sorry. That's why I picked them. I mean, if you guys followed the lock of the week, my lock of the week was Ravens teasered with the Browns. I love the Browns this week. They had guys with motivation. Cowboys didn't. Odell, we talked about him. Odell had the best freaking game of his life. It's the Cowboys. He's going to do that. He hasn't seen the Cowboys in 2 years. We talked about Baker Mayfield. I mean, look, he didn't do crap, but it was a motivation. Everything was about motivation. They had it. They have more grit, and the Dallas defense is just soft. I mean, they are. D-Law said it, man. They're soft on D. They're secondary Swiss cheese. But at least you can score, right? At least you can score. How about a team that can't score? How about the New York Giants? Oh my God! I mean, did you guys see that final drive on the Giants game? I mean, I don't. If you didn't watch the Giants game, I don't blame you. But all you gotta do. I mean, all you want to do if you want to stop the New York Giants. I mean, you already have a leg up because they're running a '90s offense. I talked about that 50,000 times. It's a '90s offense. Okay, they're running. Jason Garrett is running the same offense as if Devontae Freeman is Emmet Smith and Daniel Jones is Troy Aikman. Like, come on. But I mean, all you got to do if you want to stop the Giants, just look at where Danny Jones is throwing. All right, look at his eyes. He stares at receivers and just throws picks. I mean, that final drive, that ball went right to the DB, right to him. What is he looking at? Oh man, Jesus. New York Giants, back-to-back games without a touchdown. Back-to-back games without a touchdown. Are you kidding me? Not one touchdown? One touchdown? Not even in garbage time? Come on. That is pathetic. All right. But, I mean, look. At least the Giants, that streak will end this week. When you get to play the Cowboys. Any games? I don't know. Listen, I could recap all the games if I wanted to. Let's take a break. We'll get into the next segment because we're going to give out power rankings. Bottom 5, not 1 through 32. Just top 5, bottom 5. And then we'll get into some studs and duds and then the waiver wire pickups in the final segment. We'll break down some of these games in the next segment, but let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Going to give you guys some power rankings this week. And look, I know a lot of people, you're like, well, what's the point of power rankings? You know, this is fantasy podcast. It's not an NFL. Listen, guys, if you are picking players from good teams, don't you think those players are going to do well? If you're picking players on bad teams, like Le'Veon Bell. He's on my second worst team in the league. All right, that was a bad pick on my part. I didn't recommend him necessarily, but I picked him. And that was a bad pick because he's on a bad team. I knocked over this stupid water bottle like 2 times already during the first segment. Let's probably move that over here. But listen, let's get into the power rankings. We'll stop wasting time. I love wasting time. That's why I do this podcast, right? I'm just joking, guys. Don't laugh. So let's get into top 5. We'll run through that real quick. Number 1, I'm going to go Seattle. Listen, somebody's got to beat them unless they're still number 1. That's just because their quarterback is ridiculous. I don't think anybody's going to beat them. I mean, if Russell Wilson's playing like this, I don't think anybody's going to beat him. So until they're beaten, then they'll be moved. But they're going to stay number 1. They're going to have the crown. I should have gone 5 up, but it doesn't matter. Number 2, Buffalo Bills. This Bills team is really good. They're really good. I mean, the number one concern I had about them, I go, look, I like the team that they're building. Just the 52 guys. What am I getting out of Josh Allen? That was my only concern I gave. If you could get a Pro Bowl Josh Allen, guys starting to make some passes, completions that are accurate, down the field passes that are accurate, then you got something. And I think the Bills have something. I think trading for Stephon Diggs, I mean, on paper it didn't look too pretty, but I'm telling you what, I mean, there's some balls in that Raider game that Josh Allen was just chucking. He was chucking them, and Diggs was getting them. So I think that really goes out to Brandon Beane and the front office for getting Diggs. And that's just a match made in heaven, it looks like. It looks really good. They're looking really good this year. I think they could beat Kansas City. They're looking that good. I mean, they have some really, really good talent. There's just I love the team that they're building. And they have the makeup, too. The mental makeup is there. I mean, they're a tough team. They understand they have to be tough if they want to beat New England and try to get to playoffs where you're eventually going to have to beat the Chiefs and Andy Reid. So I really like the makeup that they have. It's just a good team brewing. They're a really good team brewing. Good chance they win the division, honestly. I think they could beat New England easily. So I like the Bills team a lot. I think they're a good team. Kansas City Chiefs at 3. I mean, Chiefs could be at 1 easily, but we'll put them at 3 just due to the fact that I think those 2 teams above them have played really, really impressive. But listen, there's no shortcut in the Chiefs. I mean, they're the Chiefs. They got the throne. They're the defending champs. Number 4, Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Big Ben back. There's a lot of confidence instilled in that team. I think last year their defense was still playing well, but they didn't really have. They knew they had no shot with Duck. Okay, they knew they had no shot with Mason Rudolph. Now I think the players on the team they go, all right, we got our guy back now, and they're rolling. They're rolling on both sides of the ball. They're doing. I mean, well, the offense is. And I don't want to say it's slow, but it's not as explosive as it was with Antonio Brown and Bell, which I don't think they'll ever replicate just due to the fact that those 2 guys were so good at their positions. I mean, when they had young Le'Veon Bell, I mean, he was really good. I mean, he was a really good fit for that offense, too. I think those, when they had Pouncey and DeCastro in their prime, I mean, he had the ability to be really patient in his running style and just do whatever he wanted. He had the right cuts, the right vision, and I think with the Jets, that's the problem that I was looking at, but I thought it would be a little bit better this year just due to the fact that I think they signed some linemen and they drafted Mekhi Becton. But I thought that they were going to really let him be a little bit more patient and have him play back to his style, but I mean, he's just trying to do too much now. He's not the same player. And then Antonio Brown, I mean, without getting into a rant about him, no, guys, he's not playing again. Okay, that's not happening. But just what he was during his prime made that offense so elite. I mean, he was so hard to cover. he was so hard to cover. There were so many guys that number 2 receivers from the Steelers, like these Eli Rogers. Remember these guys, Martavis Bryant. These guys were coming out of nowhere. They were doing so well as the number 2 because Antonio Brown was getting so much attention, double teams every single play. So really respect. But the Steelers, I mean, they have their mojo back. Mike Tomlin's got them going. So good team. And then number 5, Ravens. I think Ravens. They bounced back last week versus Washington. They're still explosive. The roster's still really good. So they'll still get the spot in the top 5 for now. And then number 6, the Cowboys. No, I'm kidding. But let's go back to the bottom 5 now. The bottom 5, we'll go up. Now we'll go top down. 28, Kayvon. Kayvon, man. Kayvon. You're Atlanta Falcons, bro. This is not a good team. This team is going nowhere fast. Their coach is so hopeless. It's honestly, I feel bad for the guy, man. I mean, just let him go. I mean, stop trying to Arthur Blank. I mean, I know he's very patient. I mean, he wants to, we want to see if we can fix things, and we're going to be patient, and we could turn it around. It's 0-4. All right, Texans just fired their coach. What are you waiting for? And speaking about Billy O'Brien, I mean, surprise. I should have talked about this earlier. I mean, I completely forgot about it. But listen, surprised. Am I going to say it was a bad move? I really can't blame him. I think the Texans, as a team, they didn't have that same fire this year, that passion. I think Watson was, he's their leader, and he wasn't playing with that. A lot of it was, I think the Hopkins trade really killed that locker room. A lot of guys, I think especially Watson, were like, man, that's really going to hurt our offense. And I think O'Brien's personality really started to wear on some of those guys. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever watched the Hard Knocks with him. You guys see a little bit about him as a coach, but he's a pretty fiery personality. He comes from the Belichick tree, so he's probably the most successful coach in the Belichick tree, but he is nothing like Bill Belichick in terms of personality. O'Brien's going to get in your face. He's going to let you know when he's angry. But, there's stuff like that where, this is professional football. I mean, I think he would be a great college coach. I hope a college program hires O'Brien because he would be a really good, really, really good college coach. But, you just can't, with the way his style is, that'll work on a bunch of young guys. But as these guys get older, that'll wear on them because these are grown men. There's no grown man out here that wants to be screamed at like he's like a 6-year-old kid who tried to, do something silly. And these are grown men. These are guys that are going to want the utmost respect. They're not going to want to be baby, but I mean, look, you want to talk to them like, professionals. And I think O'Brien, it's not saying he's unprofessional, but his fiery personality is going to wear down an entire team. It's going to wear down a culture. So I think that's why they made the move. Listen, I think was he a bad coach? No. I mean, he was a really good coach. He didn't win the Super Bowl, but listen, I think if he had Watson when he first started, he might have. I'm not even kidding. He probably would have. Because I think the way that team was built, they had a really, really good defense his first 3-4 years there. And then it started to just sour down. The more we talk about it, let me edit these power, right? Kayvon, your Falcons stink. Your Falcons are horrible. Your Falcons are clueless. But the Texans are going to be at 28. I mean, they deserve the 28 spot. Kayvon, your Falcons are going to go at 27, if that makes you any happier. But listen, I just think that with Houston, where do they go? I don't know where they go from here. I mean, you got Watson, who you just paid. I mean, you got to win now when you got a quarterback like Watson. Yeah, I mean, there's no rebuilding, there's no resetting. Maybe get a couple good players on defense and rebuild that defense, which is totally burnt. But what I was saying earlier is the sad part about it was their defense was really good early on in Bill O'Brien's tenure. And by the time Watson got really good, that defense was starting to wear down. I mean, J.J. Watt is just not the same player. And he is not the same player. He can't play 60, 55 plays a game and make that impact that he had in 2013. It's not feasible. He's 9 years in the league now, I think, coming off 2 bad injuries. I mean, at this point, J.J. Watt's a rotational player. I think the veterans that they had are gone. I mean, Brian Cushing, John Joseph, Kareem Jackson, Whitney Merciless. I mean, guys that were really that soul of the defense, they're gone. So I just don't know where they go from here. But hey, that's why they're at 28. Number 29, we're going to have to go with the Broncos. I mean, I talked about the Broncos a lot before. They're hopeless. I think Elway's looking at Trevor Lawrence at this point. I mean, I don't think Elway can honestly think Drew Lock is his future. I think it was cool hyping him up in the offseason, but I said to a couple people, let's pump the brakes. I mean, do you honestly think, here's how you got to look at it if you're John Elway. You honestly think Drew Lock is going to go toe-to-toe with Pat Mahomes? You honestly think that? I don't think there's any way he could do that, if we're being honest. Even if we got Jerry Jeudy, even if we got everybody healthy, all right? We got Jerry Jeudy healthy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. Even with all these guys, I don't think it's feasible. And, I mean, Elway, going forward, you gotta really sit down with your guys, your scouts, your executives, whoever, and number one, you got to get your quarterback straight, but you got to build your team to beat Pat Mahomes, or else you're going nowhere. I mean, that must suck to be in that division. But if you're in that division, you got to sit there and go, what are we going to do as a GM? What are we going to do to beat Pat Mahomes? You got to be thinking of that day and night, I mean, throughout the whole freaking year. That's your number one target. I mean, if you're in the division with him, you have to build your team to beat him. I just don't think, John Gruden, he's not doing that. That's why I don't think the Raiders are going to go anywhere. But Chargers, they have a slight shot just due to the fact that they could pressure him. Broncos, they don't have a shot at all right now. Number 30, the Jags. The Jags, I mean, look, they had that nice performance early on, but I think the Jags are coming back to what the Jags we thought they were going to be. They are. Listen, Dennis Green, rest in peace. But they are who we thought they were. The Jags are who we thought they were. And that's just a team that's honestly rebuilding. Their coaching staff, I don't know what they're going to do. Gardner Minshew's obviously not their quarterback, so they're going to need to pick a new quarterback. Their defense is pretty slow. I don't know where the Jags go from here. I mean, they have everybody assumed they were going to get Trevor Lawrence, and then they win a game, and then, oh man, maybe Jags are going to be an 8-8 team. I mean, who knows? But I think honestly, if they're not in the hunt for Trevor Lawrence, they're in the hunt for Justin Fields or Trey Lance or whoever. But they definitely are looking at a top 5 draft pick. New York Jets at 31. What a terrible team. We talked about the Jets last podcast. They are so bad in every facet. I mean, geez, what a dumpster fire. And then number 32, nobody else but the so proclaimed, and we are not going to call them, we are not going to call them the G word. We're going to call them the Midgets, the New York Football Midgets, who are 0-4. No surprise, they're 0-4 every single year for like the past 6-7 years. Don't the Giants start out 0-4, 0-5, 0-6 every year? Does it seem like? This is like every freaking year. And I'm not going to go in the next 10 minutes ripping the Giants. I did that already. Okay, it's done. You lose 36-9 to a junior varsity team. I'll rip you. But, I mean, listen, at least it was an improvement from last week for the Giants. But their problem is not just one thing. I mean, their problem is they don't know how to run the organization. They don't know how to pick players. They don't know how to develop players. They don't know how to do anything. They couldn't even tie shoes right, to be honest with you. So I'm not even going to waste breath on the Giants. They're just so silly. They're so pathetic. I don't know. I mean, listen, they're playing the Cowboys this week, right? If the Giants beat the Cowboys, you guys should think of something that I should be doing. I don't know if anyone's willing to make a bet on it. It's probably not a good bet. But if the Giants beat the Cowboys somehow, some way next week, You should make some. You guys should think of something. Go to the social media GSMC_FFootball. I mean, not like going streaking in the street with like Speedos on. Nothing like that. But something funny, something I should do, something I should maybe make a video saying the Giants are a good team. I don't know, something funny, something clever. So keep it PG rated, please. I mean, we try to keep this friendly, even though I slip up every once in a while. We try to keep this friendly and PG for all our listeners, even our 13-year-old listeners who are playing fantasy football in class right now. Do your homework, first of all, but also then make sure you know that the Giants are bad. So let's take a break. We're going to get into some studs and duds in fantasy, and then we're going to get into waiver wire pickups in the final segment. So be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We are going to get into Studs and Duds, the weekly segment recapping players who played really well and players who just stunk it up, like always. So let's get into some players that we did really well at the quarterback position. Number one, I say this every week, Dak Prescott. I mean, when does he not do well? Even when they're down 41. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is how ridiculous this game was. They were down 41-14, and it was blowout. Absolute blowout. I mean, everybody was on Twitter already making fun of the Cowboys. Stephen A. was already, doing his video where he's laughing with his cigar. I mean, Stephen A. Actually, he waited to the end of the game. I mean, everybody knew the Cowboys were going to lose in the fourth quarter. You're down 41-14. You're not coming back. Stephen A. even though he's like, hey, let me save my joke. Let me make sure they lose, and then I'll post a video. What a loser! But I mean, the Cowboys are down 41-14. They come storming back 9 minutes. In 9 minutes, they score 24 points, and they could have scored more. They could have had another touchdown on that final drive. I think Amari Cooper just got lazy on that route, and what's his name, Denzel Ward, undercut it, picked off Dak. But aside from that one play, which, look, it's a one pick as you're trying to get into the end zone down 11. Not that big of a deal. But to be able to score 24 points in 9 minutes, I don't think people understand how ridiculous. You realize if that pace were possible throughout a whole game, you could score 100 points on a team. And that's not even, come on, 100 points. That'll never happen in NFL history. But I'm just saying, that's how ridiculous the pace they were going at. They were able to score 24 points in 9 minutes, made the game 41-38. And they should have pulled out another watermelon kick, but obviously having that on film, I think the Browns were lining up like, okay, here comes the watermelon kick. I mean, they were not going to let that happen to them. I mean, if that happened to them, they would have had to delete the franchise and just call the season over. But, I mean, they knew it was something ridiculous was coming, so they were ready. They knelt on the ball, and then I'll give Odell credit. That was a heck of a play on that end around. Pathetic play by the Cowboys defense, but wait for Odell to make something out of nothing, because that play looked like a 10-yard loss, and he took it to the house really, really swiftly. So Dak did really well, always does well. Bridgewater did well. He did a really good job managing that game. Mike Davis gave him a nice hand, but I mean, Bridgewater's been doing a really good job managing the games down there in Carolina, and I thought he played really well. Scored 31 points on offense. I mean, had a couple tutties, so good day for Teddy Bridgewater. I was impressed. Carson Wentz, I'm not going to lie, I was impressed with what I saw last night. I mean, granted, the 49ers are so decimated too. I mean, obviously, every time Eagles fans win, oh, we were on our 7th-team receiver from the Giants practice squad, and we had our offensive lineman who was an Australian professional rugby player, and we have our second receiver from the Bears practice. I mean, it's like, come on. All right, we get it. You're hurt. Your team sucks. That's why you're hurt. But the truth is the 49ers were just as bad. The 49ers were on their practice squad corners. Okay, so while you had practice squad receivers, the 49ers were playing practice squad corners. They had the same, it was basically the same defense versus the Giants. That's why we were talking about them as a JV squad. It was that same banged up defense. So, I mean, look, I'm not going to disregard Carson Wentz. He made some plays with his legs, with his arm. He made that play late in the game to Fulgham. What the heck is his name? I never heard of that guy. I looked him up on the internet though, and guess who drafted him? Bob Quinn. Bob Quinn. What a GM you are, dude. You are so pathetic. I mean, I talk about running the Giants better from my house. I can run the Lions better from my house too, and that's a 100% fact. But shout out to Carson Wentz. He did make some plays. I shouldn't give him a shout out, but. That first throw that Mullins made, you should have just bet everything you freaking had on the Eagles. I mean, what the heck was he looking at? Did you guys see that? I mean, not the interception. It was just the first throw he made. Guy nearly picked it off. I mean, what the heck was he looking at? You should have bet everything you had on the Eagles right there. But listen, give them credit. Give them credit. They rallied. They found a way to win. And that last throw, the last pick, I think it was Duke Riley. I mean, you literally threw. I mean, you want to talk about Danny Jones. Danny Jones was horrible, but I'm getting all these names mixed up. Mullins, you threw the ball right to him. I mean, that was embarrassing. I don't know how you call yourself an NFL quarterback, but it is what it is. I mean, Beathard tried to come in, make the most of the situation. He didn't really do much, but I'll give credit to Carson Wentz when credit's due. And Josh Allen too. We talked about him earlier. What a season he's having. He's doing this with his arm, which is really impressive. I talked about how he needs to stop, trying to act like he's Lamar Jackson on the ground and just use your arm, be a quarterback, and he's doing that. He listened to me, so good job for Coach McDermott getting him right and transcribing the message I sent over to him. And he's having a heck of a season. He really is. I'm really impressed by Josh Allen. And he's a great fantasy quarterback. Guys who didn't have a good game, Kyler Murray. Look, I have Kyler Murray on my fantasy team. I think fantasy-wise, you have to start him every week because his rushing production is too valuable. I mean, that 50-yard run was literally the equivalent to a touchdown. Especially in the standard league. My God, you have to start him every week. He's just with too much potential. But the game he had was porous. He had 130 passing yards, and the problem is he's too short. I've talked about this before. He is too short. Teams are starting to play where they're taking away the sidelines. They're not letting him go horizontal. Okay, they're going to play him to where, look, you got to stay in that pocket. We're going to put outside linebacker. We're going to take away your out routes, all that. We're taking that away. You got to beat us over the middle. All right, and the problem is they might leave a guy open over the middle, but Murray's not going to see him because there's 6'4", 6'5" D linemen putting their hands up every time he's throwing the ball. He's 5'8". He can't see that. Or 5'9", whatever. I mean, he's probably 5'8", but they gave him a boost. I mean, he can't see downfield. It's just not possible. You guys, I mean, listen, I'm 6'2", so I can't. I'd sell him my height if I could. I got too much back pain for my height. But the truth is, if he had my height, he'd be a great quarterback. But if you're 5'8", have somebody who's 6'3", 6'4", stand like 5 yards in front of you with their arms up and see if you could see what's over them. You just can't. It's not possible. So when you have 3 guys, arms up in the air every time the ball's getting thrown, you just can't. He can't see it. So it's really giving him a lot of trouble. Though he is such a good athlete to where he can avoid a lot of that. Nick Foles, we all know Nick Foles isn't anything when he's not in that green uniform. Phillip Rivers, horrible game. I mean, Phillip Rivers to me is just, I don't know. I mean, he's talking so much crap, and this guy's barely doing anything. His running backs are carrying the show. His defense is really carrying the show. I mean, but he's literally just running his mouth, doing nothing. I don't think he's good at all. Jared Goff, I mean, come on, Jared Goff. 17 versus the Giants? You kidding me? It's not like you ain't have your guys. I don't know. That was pretty embarrassing to me. And then Danny Dimes was the worst of all. I mean, he's had a lot of mental errors. If the Giants get that number 1 pick, I think they're going to take Lawrence. I don't think they could do much more with this guy. I mean, there's too many mental errors he makes. And he literally stares. I'm telling you guys, he stares at receivers when I'm watching all 22. I watched it today. The guy he looks, he's like he's pointing to the receiver. He gives a DB a chance to like, okay, you're coming at me. And then he throws the ball. And DB's just like, holy crap, there's the ball. Thank you. I mean, Danny Dimes, you got to get a lot better with deception. I don't know if Jason Garrett's teaching you anything, but you got a long way to go, dude. Wide receivers, we'll move into wide receivers. Odell, why don't we give a round of applause? Best game of your life, Odell. Congratulations. Of course, it's versus the Cowboys, all right? I mean, the guy that he hears the most smack talk from is me. I mean, there's nobody who's going to rip Odell more than me, right? So the one team he's going to do well versus is my favorite team, the Cowboys. It just makes perfect sense. Am I mad at it? No, I expected it. I told you guys on the Friday podcast he was going to have the game of his life. He talked about it all week. Oh, my family is Cowboys fans. Everybody I know is Cowboys fans. When you have a player of his talent, okay, he's going to show up versus the Cowboys. There's just no way around it. It made matters worse because the defense is so pathetic that he could have done whatever he wanted. I mean, he was so wide open on that Jarvis Landry throw that I could have caught the ball. That second one, I mean, nice play. The third one was really impressive. I'm not going to lie. That end around, he did it all by himself. So I'll give him credit. 3 touchdowns, his best game of his career. Wide receiver, Amari Cooper. I thought he had a great game. Got lazy on that last one, but still had 130 yards on 12 receptions. Vikings receivers look really good. I know Texans aren't that good at corner. We talked about that on the Friday show, which is why I liked some of these Viking receivers. Jefferson specifically. I mean, Jefferson's looking good. And I think that's really playing well for the Vikings offense because I think early on teams were like, hey, the Vikings don't have a number 2. Let's just double Thielen. And I think Jefferson's saying, hey, if he comes to life, he's going to be hard for the Vikings offense. The Vikings offense to stop, just due to the fact that they have Dalvin Cook as well, and you can't leave 4 or 5 man boxes for Dalvin Cook. He'll run all over you, but Dalvin Cook has to stay healthy. And then Mike Evans, I mean, he's a terrific player. He catches. You can literally throw the ball from the 10-yard line, just throw it up in the air 50 yards. And just sit down and wait, and Mike Evans will probably catch the thing. I mean, that's all Johnny Manziel did to him in college. That's why I loved him as a college prospect. I'm like, man, this Mike Evans. I mean, he was an obvious first-round pick, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, I loved him just as a player. I mean, I thought he was going to be a great player. Just, man, Manziel is literally just running around in the backfield throwing prayers up in the air, and Mike Evans is coming down with the ball. I mean, he is just a great receiver. Let's move on to guys who were horrible. AJ Green is just a waste of time. Don't even pick him up. T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. to me, guys, he just doesn't have that burst, that same speed that he had early on in his career. I think he lost his step. And then I think the fact that he doesn't have his quarterback. I mean, his quarterback is Andrew Luck. It's not Jacoby. It's not Phillip Rivers. His quarterback was Andrew Luck, and I think losing him really, really hurt his career, and it's definitely impacting his statistics. But yeah, T.Y. to me is on the downside, guys. Not really a player I'd trade for. Player I'd probably trade away, if anything. Robert Woods, I mean, I had a buddy of mine talking about, Robert Woods, he's a great matchup this week. Look, he has the Giants, but here's Robert Woods. When you got him on the lineup, he's giving you 2 points, 1 point. When you got him on the bench, he's giving you 130 yards. He's going to get you 2 touchdowns on rushing, 2 touchdowns receiving. He gets you a touchdown. He has like 50 points. Oh, damn, I should start Robert Woods. And then you start him the next week, he gets you 3. He just can't trust that guy. Get him out of here. He's inconsistent. Not a fan of him at all for fantasy. Moving on, tight ends. George Kittle, what a phenomenal player he is. I mean, I think he's the best tight end in the league. I mean, he is just phenomenal. There's some throws Mullins was just like last hope, and then Kittle was making the most of it. What a great player. Mark Andrews, he bounced back this week. Should have picked him up, but he was expensive in DFS. But bounce back week for Mark Andrews like I expected. Dalton Schultz, again, another, I think it was 12 or 13 in standard. Could have had another touchdown if he wanted to. Got nicked up in the late game, but he'll be okay for the Giants this week. Probably a good play as well. And then Hawkinson. I really liked Hawkinson. Thought he showed some things that were really well. And had a good matchup, too. Hawkinson, I think, if Stafford's there, he's going to be good. So pick him up and put him on the bench, if anything. Tight ends that didn't do well. Gesicki. Gesicki, where'd you go, dude? I thought he was pretty. I'm like, man, I was really wrong about him in the offseason. I'm like, Gesicki, stay away. Then week 1, week 2, I'm like, okay, maybe this Mike Gesicki. Maybe they got something. And these past couple weeks haven't been anything for Gesicki. So he's on the MIA now, but maybe he'll bounce back next week. I don't know. But not a good week for him. Tyler Higbee, same thing. I mean, he had that 3-touchdown game versus the Eagles, and then he's MIA. Where'd he go? Jimmy Graham. I mean, Jimmy Graham is just, he is so burnt. I mean, everything about him is so overrated. I didn't even think he was a good player when he was with New Orleans. Yeah, I said it. Guy's a basketball player converted to a receiver. That's all he was. All right, great athlete, great target for Drew Brees. But, I mean, we talked about Sean Payton's going to pick up guys off the street. They're going to run wide open in the Saints offense. That's how they do it. They don't need to value Jimmy Graham. So I thought that was, when they robbed the Seahawks of a first-round pick and a center, that was pathetic. I couldn't believe they pulled that off. No, tight end. I mean, Jason Witten too. Why don't we talk about Jason Witten getting a touchdown? Gotta like that. He was on the duds list last week. We'll put Jason Witten on the studs for getting his first touchdown as an Oakland Raider or Las Vegas Raider. Excuse me. Let's move into running backs and we'll wrap this up. We're running low on time. Joe Mixon, Joe Mixon, baby. About time Joe Mixon did something. My God, waiting for you, buddy. About time. About time Zach Taylor stopped taking him out in the game and Zach Taylor, you were at the 2-yard line. You were taking him out and putting Bernard in. Come on. Finally, he puts him in a goal line, gets a touchdown. Go figure. Had monster day he got a reception touchdown. I think it was 3 touchdowns from Mixon. Monster day for him to make up for all those other weeks. If you started him, you won your week easily. He was just that much of an impact. I don't know what he's going to be going forward, but I honestly think it's a fluke game, if I got to be honest with you. Mike Davis, talked about him as well. Great matchup for him, and then he had a great game. He is looking like a really good player, though. I mean, I know he could be labeled as a product of the system, but I mean, he has some game to him. You don't get 100 yards back-to-back weeks if you don't have got game. Kareem Hunt, I mean, he really prospered off that Nick Chubb, and then a lot of it was just due to the fact that they were just beating the Cowboys so bad in the trenches. They could have put me at running back. I would have got 5 yards. But Kareem Hunt did really well. I don't know if he's going to get those increased snaps, though, now that Nick Chubb is out. I mean, I think his snaps are going to remain the same. That's why we'll go in the next segment. We might talk about a Browns running back to pick up. Ronald Jones, he did pretty well, too, 100 yards. If he got in the end zone, it would have been a perfect day. But I don't know. Maybe the Bucs have something in Ronald Jones. I mean, I think he's just taking advantage of the snaps that Fournette and those guys are hurt, but we'll see. Guys that really dud this week at the running back. Kenyon Drake, what a bust. I mean, I like Kenyon Drake a little bit in the offseason. I picked him up in one of my leagues. The other league I didn't, just because I didn't know what I was going to get for him. But I was wrong. He's not good at all. He is the Kenyon Drake. He is who we thought he is. Who we thought he was, to revise the Dennis Green quote a little bit. But he honestly, if you picked him in the first round, he's a bust. Zeke, Not a good game for him at all. He fumbled the ball, only 12 carries. I mean, Zeke's got to pick it up. Josh Jacobs, not a good game for him at all. Down game coming off that monster week. Darrell Henderson, I mean, Darrell Henderson was on everybody's waiver wire. I'm like, this guy's horrible. Why would you pick him up? Well, he's playing the Giants. He's going to get the starter. I'm like, what is it? What does he mean he's going to get the starter? Sean McVay doesn't have workhorse running backs. The only workhorse he had was Todd Gurley. Darrell Henderson is not even close to Todd Gurley. So there's no way he was going to be a starter. He ended up pulling this guy after like 3-4 plays. They put in Malcolm Brown the rest of the game. Honestly, I mean, I'm just hoping that Akers comes back. I have him on my bench. Hopefully he comes back. I could put him in. And they really get the ball rolling with him. I mean, part of it is the Rams O-line isn't good, but I mean, they're just rotating so many guys that I don't know what they're doing. It's just a carousel, excuse me. But Henderson isn't good at all. Miles Sanders wasn't good. I mean, basically he's not good because the 49ers are just stacking the box. They understand that the Eagles have no receivers, so they're not going to let Miles Sanders get going. And then a guy I was wrong about too, David Montgomery. I thought he'd be a lot better than he was. I mean, he just ain't it. I just don't think he's it. And I think if you're Chicago, you got to regret letting Mike Davis leave the building. I mean, I think they cut him just due to the fact that they didn't want to give up a comp pick, which is pretty ridiculous. But if you're Detroit, you got to do some soul-some like, man, we let this guy go, and our guy ain't doing too well. But that's all I got this week, guys. Studs and duds. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, wrap up the show with the best segment, the waiver wire pickups, and let's retool our roster. Get ready for Week 5 right after the break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to wrap up the show here, a little quick segment about waiver wire pickups. I mean, this list is getting slimmer and slimmer as the week... yeah, it is just getting slimmer and slimmer as the week goes on. I mean, seriously, this list is like... None of these guys I pick up. I mean, there's only one or two guys in my league that I really pick up. I mean, I'm just trying to find some names that maybe break out. But I don't know. I mean, quarterback, let's get into it. Quarterback, the only guy I like is Herbert. And speaking real football-wise, I think Dolphins, you got to get the ball rolling with Tua. Because this Herbert is looking really, really good. There's some throws he made in that game. I mean, I didn't talk about that game earlier, but Anthony Lynn, oh my God. How do you manage to lose a game like that? You're up 24, weren't they up 24-7? Or 24-14? Anthony Lynn, you freaking blew it, dude. I mean, he just can't manage a game to save his life. I've talked about this before. He's not a head coach. This is numerous amounts of times he has failed to manage the game properly. He just ain't a head coach. And I think once you see Herbert, if you're Tom Telesco, the GM of the Chargers, I mean, number one, you're probably patting yourself on the back. Number two, you're thinking to yourself, man, we got to get this guy a coach. We got to get this guy a coach. We got to get... It doesn't have to be a freaking Zach Taylor, but we got to get him a coach to maximize him because we have something here, and we can really stack some free agents and maybe make a run at the championship and maybe stack on defense. I don't know who's free agents, but if you want to beat Pat Mahomes, I mean, Pat Mahomes' contract is going to kick in. So a lot of those guys on the Chiefs defense, Honey Badger, all of them, they're going to be gone pretty soon. So you have a shot with Herbert on a rookie contract to go win some ball games. So I take advantage of it this offseason. And I'm telling you right now, you're not going to win a Super Bowl with Anthony Lynn. So you could just let him go and try to get a coach for Herbert because you might have something. But fantasy-wise, I'm telling you, this guy might be a good backup to have on your team because this kid has something in him, I'm telling you. Running backs, D'Ernest Johnson. That's where we get into the who, but we talked about this earlier with the Browns. I mean, he was the guy that were put in the game instead of Nick Chubb. They put in like 7 different guys. They were put in their practice squad running back. He was getting 10 yards of rip. It was ridiculous. They had 300 yards, but D'Ernest Johnson was the number one guy they put in when Chubb went down. I think they have like a snap count regulation on Hunt. I don't know. I just don't know if that's going to increase or not. That's why I'm saying you might want to pick up D'Ernest Johnson and take the chance with him because if he's really going to get 15 carries in that offense, that's a good fantasy player. I mean, that offensive line is really good. I talked about that on the Friday show. Not only do they have some guys, they have Wyatt Teller. He is a ball player, man. That guy is a mauler. And that guy's really impressive. They have some other good linemen. Conklin, they signed from Tennessee. But they have running game Moses. And I know you guys don't know who that is, but that's what I call Bill Callahan. Coach Bill Callahan. Yes, the guy who's the interim head coach for the Redskins. He is probably the best offensive line coach in the league. Bill Callahan just knows how to get the most out of his lines. He understands running schemes. He understands the dynamic of having a balanced offense. But, I mean, where he goes, his offensive lines and running games are very, very good. He understands the running game better than anybody. So, I mean, when the Cowboys when we were balling with DeMarco Murray, he was a big reason. He was a big reason our offensive line was what it was. I mean, you can't say is what it is because it ain't that anymore. But he was a huge reason our offensive line was doing really well. Great coach and great coach for the Browns. They're doing excellent, and a lot of it is because of Bill Callahan. So good job for them, but D'Ernest Johnson might be a good pickup just because it's a really good system. Josh Kelly, I think he's picked up in a lot of your leagues. I talked about Kelly a while ago, but, I mean, if you haven't now, you might want to. Austin Eckler's down. He's going to be down for at least a month, it seems like. So Josh Kelly's going to get a lot of burn. He was already getting a lot of burn before. Definitely a guy you want to pick up. And then Damian Harris. Damian Harris being a guy from New England, he had a great game. I mean, he was a guy I was talking about a lot in the offseason as a big-time sleeper. And I think this might be his time, man. This might be his time to shine. I mean, Sony Michel's on the IR. They're going to get Cam Newton back next week, so that'll, really open up some holes if they start to use Damian out of the read option. They were just really giving him the ball out of an eye back last night. He was still really productive. So I think the fact that when Cam comes back, they can use him in read option, that'll make him more of a dynamic threat. And I think Harris, they didn't give him a lot of opportunity, or any opportunities to say the least, but he can impact the passing game. And I think there's a chance that you see that in the near future. And after last game, I think Belichick's going to give him a lot of reps. I mean, he's one of those coaches too. He'll ride the hot hand. Obviously, last week you saw Rex Burkhead, who out of nowhere had a 150-yard game or whatever ridiculous number that is. So you really can't count on a Patriots running back being a quote-unquote workhorse. But I'm telling you, I think they really like this Damian Harris. So I'd pick him up if you don't already. I can't think of anybody else at running back worth putting your hands on. So let's go to receivers. Receivers, Tim Patrick. Who? Yeah, Tim Patrick. Backup receiver on the Denver Broncos. I mean, we talked about the Broncos being a hopeless team. They don't have Drew Lock. So it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, are you really going to pick some of these guys up? Really? But I got to predict some breakouts. And I think with the volume he's getting, there's a chance he could break out. There's a chance he could score a touchdown. So might be looked at for a deeper league waiver wire pickup. Laviska Shenault, I talked about Laviska a lot on a couple podcasts ago, and I talked about him on the Twitter page. He's probably the number one receiver pickup if you don't have him already. I put a claim on him immediately. He's just going to give you a lot of different looks. He can run the ball. They're going to put him at wildcat. He makes some tough catches and contest. Maybe they got to get him involved in the red zone a little bit more. But if he gets in the end zone, he's going to have a great game. He's still getting a lot of targets. He's getting at least 10 touches or 10 targets a game, I would say, just in terms of rushing, receiving. So he's going to get his looks out of all these guys, and I think he's the one with the most upside, just due to the fact that Jacksonville, they're in a rebuilding year. They understand that. So they'll take a shot on a young guy like Laviska. They don't really care. Scotty Miller, backup receiver for the Bucs. I mean, I think he's only a matchup play just due to the fact that when they're playing bad, I mean, I don't know if I consider the Chargers necessarily a bad defense, but Brady absolutely came back and shredded them up, which is a little bit surprising. But Scotty Miller, man, I mean, he's just situational. But if he can consistently get those opportunities, maybe with the Godwin out for the foreseeable future, Evans, we all know, is injury prone, he might be worth the pickup. So you never know. Good passing offense, why not pick up a good receiver? We talked about that earlier. I think that's all I really got at receiver, guys. A couple tight ends, and then we'll wrap up this show, because I don't know if I got any more else for you, man. Robert Tonyan. Who? Remember that guy for the Packers catching all those touchdowns? Yeah, that's his name, Robert Tonyan. If you guys don't already, you got to go, Packer fan or not, you got to go to the Pat McAfee show. You got to watch Aaron Rodgers. I'm telling you, that interview is gold. It's funny. You got to watch this stuff. So go pick up Robert Tonyan if you need a backup tight end. I don't know if his targets are going to continue, but without Adams and without Alan Lazard, you'd assume he's going to get a lot of targets. Adams will probably come back next week. But, I mean, the Falcons were so decimated at safety that this guy was just, I mean, there was 2 plays. He was wide. I mean, you guys know that Kevin Burkhardt, he's wide open. I mean, he was ridiculous. I mean, you could literally hear Kevin Burkhardt in your head. That's how wide open he was. But Robert Tonyan, maybe a guy you want to pick up. Dalton Schultz, that's the only other name I can think of because he's probably out there still. Pick him up, guys, because Dalton Schultz getting a lot of targets, and he could have games where he's getting multiple touchdowns. That's really good. So that's all I got this week, guys. I don't know if I can think of anybody else. I mean, I can probably give you about like 3-4, maybe Justin Jackson, running back for the Chargers. I mean, now that Ekelar's down, maybe he gets some reps, but there's just some guys, they're not getting any burn. Like, I might have to break out these guys, but like, they're not getting any burn. They're not worth being on your team. So, I don't know, man. We'll talk about it more on the Saturday show, but that's all I got for you guys. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Please follow the social media. Okay, most of you guys have already done that by now, but please go over GSMC_F football. I'm uploading some content there, guys. You don't want to miss it. I'm dropping a lot of nuggets on Kayvon's show. Please go over to follow Kayvon's podcast. Okay, he's doing NFL, more not fantasy related, but more just NFL talk in general. Still a really good podcast. It's entertaining. I love going on that show. It's a great show. GSMC_football. The accounts are linked together. If you find one, you'll find the other. But subscribe, stay tuned, like, and comment. Please comment, guys. I want to know if you listen, good or bad. Like, if you comment, Emmet Wyman's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just a dumb Cowboys fan. Tell me that. Let me know. Okay? Because at least I know you're listening. But I don't care what comments you have. I just want feedback. That's all I want. And not only do I want it, Tate wants it, Sarah wants it, the entire network wants it, because we're all trying to improve. We're all trying to get better at the end of the day. So, good or bad, we'd love to hear your feedback. But please follow the social medias and please stay up to date. That's all I have for you guys. Please take care. Good night. Stay safe. Let's get these fantasy rosters right.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.